Hello, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Geneva Peace Week this year. I'm Prerna, the founder of People Beyond Borders, a startup nonprofit born during COVID times. There are about 79.5 million refugees and internally displaced people at the end of 2019 who have fled conflicts and human rights violations from different corners of the world. Our goal is to work with rather than for forcibly displaced persons so they can recreate their own communities in a way that reflects and channels their resilience and creativity. We're working in collaboration with them to inspire them to connect with each other in person and online, build on their resources and support systems for skill sharing, entrepreneurial initiatives, psychosocial and creative workshops such as expressive arts, theater, and movement. My colleague Bruna is actually a living example of this work in Brazil, and we're working together to apply a human centered lens in the work we do with marginalized communities. I'd like to pass the mic to Bruna.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bruna Kadletz, and I'm a humanitarian activist from Brazil. I coordinate an NGO called Hospitality Círculos, whose mission is to regenerate a culture of peace and hospitality in times of xenophobia and intolerance. We operate mainly in South Brazil, and our projects create spaces for learning, income generation, connection, and social transformation. Currently, we assist and support over 2,000 asylum seekers, refugees, and vulnerable migrants in their integration process. Back in 2016, I was invited to participate in the documentary My Land Lives in Me, directed by Alan Gilsenan and produced by the Yellow Asylum Production in association with the Tony Ryan Trust. The documentary weaves a deeply personal journey with reflections and stories from the front lines of forced displacement. Taking the viewer from the edge of displacement in the Amazon basin to the LAs of refugee camps in Lebanon and Palestine, and to the heart of how we care for others in our quest to find home in a changing world. Our digital product is an excerpt from the documentary, followed by a Q&A. The segment you're about to watch was filmed in Istanbul, Turkey, and is about 7 minutes long. Turkey is home to over 3 million refugees, Syrians who have fled their conflict and sought refuge in Turkish land. We wanted to shed light onto the lived experiences of refugees and while connecting with their humanity. And in this process, we experienced a deeply transformation within our own selves. So I hope you can also relate to the plight of refugees and enjoy the segment you're about to watch, and stay tuned because just after this excerpt we'll have a Q&A. Istanbul is such a special place, full of beauty, devotion, movement, and light. A physical and metaphorical meeting of East and West. It's a city where different worlds come alive together, where the ancient meets the contemporary. It's a place of transience. One can imagine the lonely refugees stealing away on these ships in the night. There is a moment in life when the outer journey meets the sea of devotion. In this meeting point, we find deep meaning. We find our place in the world where we belong. Yet, inwardly, most of us are out of place, disconnected from ourselves, life, and others, struggling on the surface of distractions and desires, trapped in the shattering of our minds in endless problems and conflicts, isolated with indifference. We lost the practice of being present, of being aware, of listening, of caring. Even in sacred places, people seem more interested in selfies than in rooting their steps on the soil of reverence. Over 3.5 million Syrian refugees live in Turkey. The country hosts the largest population of registered refugees in the world. In the district of Fatih, small project Istanbul offers livelihood activities and leadership skills for displaced women, supporting them rebuilding their lives with dignity.
Because in Mosul it is war.
Oh, you're from Mosul?
Yeah.
You're here with your family?
Yeah, my husband and my children.
Do the children also come here to the center?
No, yeah, before to teach English, Turkish. Yeah.
How many children do you have?
5 children.
The activities also include children. They create joyful memories and build a sense of community. Through the stories of refugees, we can visit places and cultures. We can see distant land and war zones through the eyes of the others. Having a direct connection with refugees breaks down our perceptions and stereotypes in which they are commonly associated with threats and problems. In the intimacy of conversations, we find people just like us, with dreams and talents, with personality and individuality. Between laughs and meals, we find friendship, hospitality, and care. It's much easier to humanize the distant image of refugees once you actually connect with their humanity. One of the most disheartening implications of being displaced from home is being displaced from the realm of humanity. Once displaced, one might become invisible to the system, having their own existence criminalized. The vast majority of refugees worldwide live in inhumane and squalid conditions in urban slums, refugee camps, and temporary shelters with very few opportunities to restore their loss. They are confined in zones of exclusion and subjected to dehumanizing politics. In a world broken by divisive inequality, wars, and climate change, those living in the landscapes of destitution have their humanity and dignity erased. Yes.
Thank you so much, Bruna, for sharing that excerpt with us. It really did give a glimpse into your journey in this documentary. I'm going to quote something. I was taking notes, and I had goosebumps while watching it. I'm quoting you. It says that through the stories of refugees, we can visit the distant lands and cultures. In the intimacy of conversations, we find people who are just like us. With dreams and talents, it is much easier to humanize refugees once you connect with their humanity. It's beautiful. And I really want to know a bit more about what inspired you to make this documentary, Bruna.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Bruna. I do believe that it's much easier to humanize someone or a group of people once you connect with them. And it's from another perspective, it's sort of odd, right, to state that we must humanize a group of people. That it feels to me that as a humanity as a whole, we sort of reach at the bottom when we have to state that yes, refugees are human beings and they deserve to be treated as such.
Yes.
In respect to your question, I think that the possibility of traveling to different places and learning directly from people who are forced to flee was one of the drivers of participating in this project. And then having the space to reflect upon those experiences and try to make sense of them, try to place them in a global context, while in my own way weaving a narrative that I believe speaks to other universal themes, such as our quest to find home, either inner home or outer home, our need to belong, to feel safe and in place within ourselves, and also our call to act and respond from a place of care and love. And in parallel, of course, the opportunity to explore questions that broaden our collective understanding of the refugee plight, calling attention to the potential, to their potential to contribute to social, economic, and cultural development. There's another scene in the documentary which I like very much. It shows a little bit of the work we carry out in my hometown in Florianopolis. We have a project in which we bring together members of host societies and refugees in order to promote intercultural dialogue. And our intention is simply to create a space where trust is like this invisible thread binding participants, binding people together, so they can feel comfortable enough to open up and listen to each other's stories. And as we both know, stories are powerful tools for cultivating empathy, for transformation, and for humanizing the other, and this way preventing tension and further conflict. So I would love to show this scene to you, Perna, and to our audience. So
we'd love to see it.
Bear with me, and I'll share my screen. Okay, so here we go. I left a promising career in dentistry to work with people who are forced to flee their homelands. This work includes creating spaces for bringing together host communities and newcomers, for engaging them in meaningful conversations, and hopefully, these conversations can humanize the stories of refugees and asylum seekers, can amplify the voices of the other.
I was told that this is the Canadian embassy calling for Mohammed outside.
In this school, refugee and migrant students attend classes with dispossessed Brazilians from favelas and deprived neighborhoods. Here, they share the same space and opportunities. Our society have become so hostile to the other, to the stranger, treating them as unwanted people. I think of the millions of children in refugee camps, in slums, and in shanty towns whose fate is bleak. So much has been taken away from these children, and we have a responsibility to change this reality. In my perception, the crisis is a call for action, an invocation to all of us, an invocation to us all to change, to reclaim our true humanity. Holding this conversation at Lauro Miller School was very special for me because I think we can stop here.
I think I could have continued watching. I wanted to, I think, first of all, appreciate how you're bringing host communities and refugees together and building trust. I know it's not easy, and especially having worked with refugees across the world, I also know that, changing the narratives and letting them reclaim their own narratives, changing the narratives from victims and perpetrators to human beings, like you mentioned earlier, it's not easy. Even though it should be a basic human right, it should be given. It shouldn't be something that we need to work towards. Having said that, I wanted to ask Bruna, what is the main takeaway you want your audience to, take away after watching the excerpt that you shared with us?
I mean, the main takeaway is for people to start questioning these narratives and start perhaps amplifying their perceptions onto the other, on refugees. And I understand the documentary has a different approach to storytelling. And you hear my voice a lot because it's a film essay, so I narrate the film. And Alan, the director, calls it a filmic meditation because besides being this film essay, it also has a reflective quality. So this will be the second takeaway, if I may, to integrate this reflective awareness in the work you carry out in the field. And too often people ask me, what can I do? So people want to get involved. And my answer is, instead of asking, what can I do? Ask yourself, how can I be in order to do? It sounds so simple, but this shift does make a difference. The awareness one infuses in the doing makes a lot of difference. And then one can take a step further and go deeper. I love this quote from Professor Omid Safi. There's a difference between sight and insight. There is seeing with the eyes of the head, and there is perceiving with the inner eye, the eye of the heart. And practice your inner perception muscle and learn to see both with the eyes of the head and the eyes of the heart. And this would be my third takeaway. And if people sense that the documentary could provide this space where they can watch what is happening in the world and at the same time be attentive and watchful to their own responses to what emerges within them. And I believe that the documentary invites viewers to see complex and uncomfortable global crises with both the eye of the head and the eye of the heart. And we must understand that the refugee predicaments are not a series of isolated events taking place in a vacuum or happening in a parallel universe, as our politicians would like us to believe, that it's their problem, that it's happening there. No, I believe they're living part of an interconnected world. What is happening to them is happening to us. And this would be my last takeaway, to understand, to deeply understand and realize in our own bodies that we are part of a living interconnected world. And the whole logic, us versus them, is actually causing a lot of trouble. So just, if we could just pause for a second, reflect, you know, just take a deep breath in and empathize, I believe we could generate action from a different place, from a place of genuine care.
Wow, beautiful. Actually, when you were saying this, I actually felt myself taking a deep breath in as well, and oxygenating every aspect, and recognizing that shift within me also, that inner shift is what's going to reflect in the outer shift as well. I'm thinking on behalf of our audience that, you know, some of us might be wondering, how can I apply this in my own community? These ideas are beautiful and I can apply it inside myself, pause, but how do I apply it to my communities? I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
I will start that answering that question with another quote that I revisit from time to time, especially when I feel overwhelmed, when I feel there's no hope. And the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, from Lao Tzu. And I think that we are constantly taking that first step. And in my perception, that first step also includes acknowledging that rather than applying something on top of another, we could, instead of that, integrate those takeaways, integrate what makes sense into the work. Then to me, it feels more organic. So when you start infusing your practices, your projects with awareness, when you start to amplify, to broaden your perception, to expand your worldview, to feel how everything is interrelated, and to challenge those narratives in which refugees are constantly portrayed and treated as threats, as problems, then you align a different set of values to the work that you do. And I believe that naturally is integrated in the work. For instance, self-care is a major pillar in peace building, in people working in zones of conflict. But sometimes it's something that you do on the weekends, something that you do on your meditation mat. And what I'm saying is that it needs to become an integrated practice and not something that you do when you remember or when you need. And that is, I think it's also related to the other aspects that I was mentioning, that it has to become a natural part of yourself when you apply those principles to the work that you do. And as you can notice, I'm very resistant to say you should do this, this, and that, and just to give you a recipe, because I don't believe in that. I believe in getting to know the content, getting to know the person, the people that you're working with, getting to know yourself, the local context, and then feel how you can integrate some of the peace building principles into the work that you do, because the reality in South Brazil is different to the reality in Northern Brazil, where you see a lot of Venezuelans crossing the border, which is different to the reality in Greece, in Turkey, or even in India, where you're based. And I think that we should take into the consideration the local context, because it's a very complex scenario.
Absolutely. And Bruna, like as you said, one size definitely does not fit all. And I think your documentary really speaks to it. It brings it alive because you have showed different contexts of the world and, you know, weaved it with this one thread, our humanity, the thread of our humanity. And I really, really, you know, want to open up this space for our audience to watch our documentary and to be able to contact you or me to screen it. So this is something that I really want all of us to remember, that, you know, we could watch this documentary and it'll help us reflect on our own work and create an integrated practice for us in the future and in present. So thank you so much for this. Yes, we are looking forward to screening your documentary in the future and learning more from you.
Thank you so much, Prerna. Yes, so as Prerna said, if you feel touched, if you want to watch the full documentary, please contact me or Prerna, and we can arrange a screening in your school, community, or a local event. Thank you so much, and we're gonna share our contacts in the following screen.